Galápagos Islands, the living laboratory of evolution. Far out in the vast blue waters of the eastern Pacific Ocean, nearly 1,000 kilometers west of mainland Ecuador, lies one of the most extraordinary places on Earth. An isolated volcanic archipelago where nature has followed its own path for millions of years. Welcome to the Galápagos Islands. A place where giant tortoises roam ancient lava fields, marine iguanas dive beneath the waves, and birds evolved without fear of humans. Often called the living laboratory of evolution, the Galápagos Islands continue to inspire scientists, conservationists, and travelers from around the world. But these islands are far more than a paradise for wildlife. They represent one of humanity's greatest scientific discoveries. The Galápagos archipelago consists of 13 major islands, 6 smaller islands, and over 100 rocky islets scattered across nearly 45,000 square kilometers of ocean. These islands were born from powerful volcanic eruptions above a geological hotspot beneath the Nazca tectonic plate. Unlike continental islands, Galápagos emerged directly from the ocean floor. Some islands are more than 5 million years old, while others are still forming today through active volcanic activity. This continuous geological process creates an ever-changing landscape where young lava fields exist beside ancient eroded mountains. Every island tells a different chapter in Earth's geological history. Despite their remote location, life somehow found its way here. Seeds drifted across the ocean. Birds arrived on powerful winds. Reptiles floated for weeks on natural rafts of vegetation. Once isolated, these pioneering species began evolving independently. Over countless generations, they adapted to different climates, food sources, and landscapes. This remarkable process produced an astonishing number of endemic species, plants and animals found nowhere else on Earth. Today, nearly 80% of the land birds, around 97% of reptiles, and a large proportion of native plants exist only in the Galápagos Islands. It is one of the highest levels of endemism anywhere on the planet. Among the island's most famous residents are the Galápagos giant tortoises. Some individuals weigh more than 250 kilograms and can live well over 100 years, with a few estimated to approach 170 years of age. Each island developed its own unique tortoise population. Over thousands of years, differences in vegetation and terrain shaped the size and form of their shells. On islands with tall cactus forests, tortoises evolved raised saddle-shaped shells that allowed them to stretch their necks higher. On islands with abundant low vegetation, they developed large dome-shaped shells suited for grazing close to the ground. These subtle differences would later become one of the greatest clues in understanding biological evolution. Another extraordinary resident is the marine iguana. Found nowhere else on Earth, it is the world's only lizard that spends much of its life feeding in the sea. These remarkable reptiles dive beneath the cold Pacific waters to graze on algae growing across volcanic rocks. Their flattened tails act like powerful paddles, while specialized glands remove excess salt from their bodies. After returning to land, they often sneeze salt crystals from their nostrils, a fascinating adaptation that helps them survive in a harsh marine environment. Nearby, playful Galápagos sea lions rest along sandy beaches, while graceful blue-footed boobies perform elaborate courtship dances, lifting their brilliant blue feet one after another in a spectacular display. Every species here tells a story of adaptation. Every behavior is the result of millions of years of natural selection. In September 1835, a young British naturalist named Charles Darwin arrived aboard HMS Beagle. At just 26 years old, Darwin spent only about 5 weeks exploring the islands. Yet those few weeks would forever change the course of science. He carefully observed that mockingbirds, tortoises, and finches differed from one island to another. At first, these variations seemed insignificant. But years later, after returning to England and studying his collections, Darwin realized something extraordinary. Species were not fixed and unchanging. Instead, they gradually evolved over time through adaptation to their environments. These observations became one of the foundations of his revolutionary theory of evolution by natural selection, published in 1859 in On the Origin of Species. The Galápagos Islands had become one of the birthplaces of modern evolutionary biology. Today, the Galápagos remain one of the world's greatest natural treasures. But protecting this fragile ecosystem has become an enormous challenge. Conservation, UNESCO, and the future. The Galápagos Islands are often described as one of the last truly wild places on Earth. Yet even this isolated paradise is not beyond the reach of human influence. For centuries, the islands remained largely untouched. But beginning in the 18th and 19th centuries, whalers, pirates, and settlers arrived, bringing with them animals and plants that had never existed in the archipelago. Goats, pigs, rats, cats, and invasive insects soon spread across the islands. What seemed harmless at first would eventually become one of the greatest threats to the fragile ecosystem. Without natural predators, many invasive species multiplied rapidly. Wild goats consumed native vegetation at astonishing rates, stripping hillsides bare and destroying the food sources of giant tortoises and land iguanas. Introduced rats preyed on bird eggs and hatchlings. Cats hunted reptiles and seabirds that had evolved without fear of mammalian predators. Because Galapagos wildlife had developed in isolation for millions of years, many species lacked the natural defenses needed to survive these new arrivals. Protecting this unique ecosystem required unprecedented conservation efforts. Recognizing the global importance of the islands, the government of Ecuador established Galapagos National Park in 1959, exactly 100 years after the publication of Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species. Today, approximately 97% of the archipelago's land area is protected as national park land. Human settlements occupy only a small fraction of the islands. Protection extends beyond the land. In 1998, Ecuador created the Galápagos Marine Reserve, one of the world's largest marine protected areas. Covering more than 130,000 square kilometers, the reserve safeguards coral communities, underwater volcanic landscapes, migratory routes, sharks, whales, sea turtles, and thousands of marine species. Its waters serve as a biological crossroads where warm tropical currents meet cold, nutrient-rich currents flowing from Antarctica. This unique oceanographic system supports an extraordinary diversity of marine life rarely found anywhere else on Earth. The international community also recognized the island's exceptional value. In 1978, UNESCO inscribed the Galápagos Islands on the World Heritage List, making them one of the very first 12 World Heritage Sites ever designated. The decision acknowledged not only the island's extraordinary biodiversity but also their unmatched importance in advancing scientific understanding of evolution and ecology. Later, the protected marine reserve was added to the World Heritage Property, expanding international recognition of the entire ecosystem. Today, the Galápagos stand as one of the world's most significant natural heritage sites. They are protected not only for Ecuador, but for all humanity. Scientific research continues to play a central role in preserving the islands. The Charles Darwin Foundation, established in 1959, operates the Charles Darwin Research Station on Santa Cruz Island. Scientists from around the world collaborate with Ecuadorian authorities to monitor wildlife populations, restore habitats, and study the complex interactions between species. One of their greatest conservation successes involves the giant tortoise. Several tortoise species had been pushed to the edge of extinction through hunting and habitat destruction. Conservation breeding programs carefully incubated eggs, raised hatchlings in protected environments, and later released them into the wild. Thousands of young tortoises have now returned to islands where populations were once collapsing. Entire ecosystems have begun to recover as these giant herbivores once again disperse seeds and shape vegetation across the landscape. Nature, when given the opportunity, has shown an extraordinary ability to heal. The Galápagos also represent one of the world's most important destinations for sustainable ecotourism. Each year, Several 100,000 visitors travel to the islands to witness wildlife found nowhere else on Earth. However, tourism is carefully regulated. Strict visitor quotas, licensed naturalist guides, designated walking trails, and rigorous environmental regulations help minimize human impact. Visitors are required to maintain safe distances from wildlife, avoid introducing foreign organisms, and respect the delicate balance of the ecosystem. This careful management has become an international model for balancing tourism with conservation. It demonstrates that responsible travel can support both local communities and environmental protection. Yet despite these achievements, the future of the Galápagos remains uncertain. Climate change poses growing challenges. The warming of ocean waters affects marine food chains and increases the frequency of powerful El Niño events. These climate fluctuations reduce the abundance of fish and marine algae, threatening species such as marine iguanas, Galápagos penguins, and flightless cormorants. Plastic pollution carried by ocean currents has also reached even these remote islands. Illegal fishing outside protected waters continues to place pressure on shark populations and migratory marine species. Conservation is no longer simply about protecting isolated islands. It requires global cooperation. The health of the Galápagos ultimately depends on the health of the world's oceans. As the sun sets over ancient volcanic landscapes, thousands of seabirds return to their nesting colonies. Sea lions gather along quiet beaches. Marine iguanas absorb the last warmth of the day on black lava rocks. Life continues much as it has for thousands of years. But this remarkable balance survives only because people around the world have recognized its value and chosen to protect it. The Galápagos Islands are far more than a collection of volcanic islands in the Pacific Ocean. They are a living reminder that nature is constantly changing, adapting, and evolving. From the giant tortoises that inspired scientific discovery to the marine iguanas that conquered the sea, every species tells a remarkable story of survival and resilience. The observations made here by Charles Darwin transformed our understanding of life on Earth and laid the foundation for modern evolutionary biology. Today, the Galápagos remain one of the world's most carefully protected natural environments. Yet their future depends on our collective responsibility to preserve biodiversity, protect fragile ecosystems, and support sustainable conservation efforts. As a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the Galápagos Islands belong not only to Ecuador but to the shared heritage of all humanity. They remind us that even the most remote places are connected to the future of our planet. Every island, every species, and every ecosystem has a role to play in the delicate balance of life. By protecting places like the Galápagos, we preserve more than extraordinary wildlife, we safeguard Earth's natural history and ensure that future generations can continue to learn from one of the greatest living laboratories ever known. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Galápagos Islands. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us on our next adventure as we explore another extraordinary world cultural heritage site.